In a world that constantly asks us to post, prove, and perform, there is a silent power in stepping back. Not running away from life, but running toward yourself. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is not an announcement, not a debate, not an explanation, but silence paired with effort. Many people talk about their plans, very few people live them. Words are productive, but results are transformative. When you disappear for a while, you stop feeding the noise and start feeding your growth. You stop asking for validation and start building value. Growth loves privacy. Seeds grow underground, not in the spotlight. 6 months of focused effort can change the direction of your entire life. Not 6 months of perfection, but 6 months of sincerity. 6 months of sincerity. 6 months where you wake up with intention, where you do the uncomfortable work even when no one is watching. Where you choose discipline over distraction and progress over popularity. When you disappear, you begin to hear your own thoughts again. You realize how much of your energy was spent explaining yourself to people who were never invested in your journey. Silence teaches something powerful. You don't owe everyone access to your process. Your responsibility is not to impress, it is to improve. During these months, you will feel tempted to show progress early. Resist that urge. Premature celebration steals momentum. Let your work mature. Let your skills sharpen. Let your habits become automatic. The strongest confidence is built quietly, not loudly. And when you return, you won't need to announce anything. People will notice, not because you demanded attention, but because results command respect. Your growth will speak in your posture, your clarity, your calmness, and your consistency. You will no longer argue for your worth. Your work will introduce you. Disappear long enough to build something real. Return only when your results can speak for you. Silence is often misunderstood. People think that if you are quiet, you are weak, unsure, falling behind. But silence, when chosen consciously, is not an absence of action. It is a deliberate strategy. It is the space where focus sharpens and distractions lose their grip. When you stop reacting to everything around you, you reclaim your energy. And energy, when directed properly, becomes growth. In noisy environments, attention is constantly divided. Notifications, opinions, comparisons, and expectations pull the mind in multiple directions. Silence creates a protective boundary. It allows you to decide what truly deserves your time and what simply drains it. When you reduce unnecessary conversations and external validation, your mind stops scattering itself. Instead of trying to be everywhere, you begin to be fully present in what matters most. Silence also removes the pressure to perform. When people are watching, there is an urge to look successful rather than to become successful. This pressure leads to shortcuts, exaggeration, and surface-level effort. But in silence, there is no audience to impress. The only standard left is your own integrity. You begin to ask better questions. Am I improving? Am I learning? Am I becoming stronger than yesterday? These questions lead to real progress, not temporary applause. Another powerful aspect of silence is clarity. When the noise fades, your thoughts become clearer. You start noticing patterns, habits that help you and habits that quietly sabotage you. Silence gives you the courage to face uncomfortable truths. It shows you where you have been avoiding effort and where you have been wasting potential. This awareness can be unsettling, but it is also liberating. You cannot change what you refuse to see. Silence is also deeply connected to discipline. Motivation is loud and emotional. Discipline is quiet and consistent. No one applauds you for waking up early, practicing daily, or saying no to distractions. These actions happen in silence, yet they shape your future more than any public declaration ever could. Over time, these quiet efforts compound. What seems small today becomes significant tomorrow. Choosing silence does not mean cutting off the world completely. It means being selective. It means knowing when to listen and when to withdraw. It means understanding that not every opinion deserves your attention and not every battle deserves your response. This selectivity preserves mental strength and emotional balance. Most importantly, silence builds inner confidence. When you stop seeking constant reassurance, you learn to trust yourself. You become comfortable moving forward without approval. This self-trust is powerful because it does not depend on circumstances. Whether people praise you or doubt you, you remain steady. That steadiness is the foundation of lasting success. Silence, when used wisely, becomes a tool. It sharpens focus, strengthens discipline, and deepens self-awareness. It is not a retreat from life, but a preparation for it. Real progress rarely happens in front of an audience. It happens in moments when no one is clapping, commenting, or even noticing. When attention becomes the goal, growth quietly takes a back seat. But when you step away from the noise of validation, something powerful begins to happen. You start working for substance instead of approval. Noise is not just sound, it is comparison, expectation, and constant feedback. Every opinion you consume subtly shapes your decisions. You begin adjusting your pace to match others, questioning your path because someone else seems ahead, or rushing results just to prove a point. In this environment, progress becomes reactive instead of intentional. Stepping away from that noise creates mental space where your actions are guided by purpose rather than pressure. Validation feels good, but it is unreliable. Praise can inflate the ego, and criticism can paralyze effort. When your motivation depends on external reactions, consistency becomes fragile. On good days, you feel unstoppable. On silent days, you feel invisible. Real growth cannot survive on such unstable fuel. By distancing yourself from validation, you build a stronger foundation, one rooted in self-respect and commitment rather than applause. Privacy protects the learning process. When no one is watching, you are more willing to fail honestly. You experiment without fear of judgment. You make mistakes, reflect, and improve. This freedom accelerates growth. Many people avoid this phase because it feels lonely. But loneliness, when chosen, can be productive. It gives you uninterrupted time to develop skills, strengthen weaknesses, and understand yourself deeply. Another important shift happens when noise disappears. Patience increases. Without constant updates and comparisons, you stop measuring progress daily and start trusting the process. You understand that meaningful change takes time. Muscles do not grow after one workout, and character does not build after one challenge. When you are not announcing every step, you allow growth to happen naturally and steadily. Working in privacy also builds resilience. When things go wrong, and they will, you face them without an audience. There is no embarrassment to hide from, no image to protect. You learn to recover quietly and continue forward. This resilience becomes inner strength. Later, when challenges appear in public, you remain calm because you've already faced harder battles alone. Stepping away from noise also improves focus. Focus. Energy that was once spent scrolling, comparing, and explaining gets redirected into learning, practicing, and refining. Small improvements compound. What feels invisible in the beginning slowly becomes undeniable. This is the beauty of private effort. It accumulates silently until it shows up as visible competence. When you no longer chase validation, your standards rise. You stop asking, will people like this, and start asking, does this align with who I want to become? That question changes everything. It shifts your identity from performer to builder. Growth away from noise is not isolation. It is intention. It is choosing depth over display and progress over popularity. Most people feel busy, but very few are actually moving forward. One of the biggest reasons for this confusion is the habit of talking more than doing. Speaking about plans creates a false sense of progress. The mind feels rewarded simply by sharing intentions, even when no real action has taken place. This is why many people remain stuck at the level of ideas, while their lives show little evidence of change. When you talk about your plans, you invite opinions before results. Some people will discourage you, some will distract you, and some will praise you too early. All three can slow you down. Discouragement plants doubt. Distraction pulls your focus away. Early praise reduces urgency. Execution, on the other hand, thrives in silence. It requires concentration, patience, and the willingness to work without immediate recognition. There is also a psychological cost to over-explaining. When you tell others what you are going to do, your brain experiences a sense of completion. This is dangerous. The motivation that should be used for action gets spent on conversation. You feel productive without being productive. Over time, this creates a habit of announcing goals instead of achieving them. Quiet execution breaks this cycle. It keeps your energy stored for effort, not expression. Another issue with constant talking is accountability to the wrong people. When you involve too many voices in your plans, you become emotionally tied to their reactions. If they doubt you, you hesitate. If they expect quick results, you rush. Execution requires flexibility, but public plans lock you into expectations. Working quietly allows you to adapt, adjust, and improve without feeling exposed or pressured. Action also teaches lessons that words never can. You can discuss discipline, but only practice reveals your limits. You can talk about growth, but only effort exposes your weaknesses. Execution puts you in contact with reality. It forces you to confront resistance, boredom, failure, and fear. These experiences shape character. Talking about them does not. Quiet execution builds trust with yourself. Every time you act without announcing, you prove that you don't need external validation to move forward. This self-trust is powerful. It strengthens consistency. You stop relying on motivation and start relying on commitment. Even on days when you don't feel inspired, you show up because action has become part of your identity. There is also dignity in letting results speak. When outcomes are visible, explanations become unnecessary. You don't need to convince anyone. Your work stands on its own. This kind of respect cannot be demanded. It is earned over time through consistent effort. By reducing talk and increasing action, life becomes simpler. There is less noise, less pressure, and more progress. You stop managing perceptions and start building reality. Energy flows where effort goes. When execution becomes the focus, momentum follows naturally. Choosing execution over explanation is not about secrecy, it is about sincerity. It is choosing progress that is real over praise that is temporary. Excuses often sound reasonable in the moment, but over time they become heavy. Chains, heavy chains. Years can pass with the same explanations repeated again and again, while life remains unchanged. The truth is that transformation does not require endless time. It requires focused commitment. 6 months of disciplined effort done sincerely can outweigh years of delay filled with justifications and comfort. Most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a few months. They expect instant results, and when those results don't appear quickly, they lose heart. But meaningful change is not dramatic at first. It is subtle. It shows up as slightly better habits, slightly stronger focus, and slightly improved discipline. These small changes, when repeated daily, accumulate into powerful outcomes over 6 months. Excuses thrive in vagueness. Someday, soon, or when things improve sound hopeful, but they postpone responsibility. Discipline removes vagueness. It gives each day a clear direction. Even when motivation fades, discipline continues. It turns effort into routine. Over 6 months, routines shape identity. You no longer try to improve. You become someone who improves. You become someone who improves. 6 months of discipline also teaches patience. Instead of chasing shortcuts, you learn to respect the process. You begin to value consistency over intensity. 1 hour of focused work every day becomes more powerful than occasional bursts of enthusiasm. This steady rhythm builds trust within yourself. You start believing in your ability to follow through, and that belief changes how you approach every challenge. Another powerful effect of disciplined time is clarity. When you commit to a path for 6 months, distractions lose their appeal. You stop jumping from one idea to another. Your mind settles. With fewer decisions to make, your energy increases. This clarity allows you to go deeper, refine skills, and correct mistakes early. Progress becomes intentional rather than accidental. Excuses often protect fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of discomfort. Discipline confronts fear through action. Each day you show up despite resistance, fear weakens. You realize that discomfort is temporary, but regret lasts much longer. Over 6 months, what once felt intimidating becomes familiar. Confidence grows quietly from repeated exposure to challenge. Discipline also reshapes time perception. Instead of feeling rushed or overwhelmed, you feel anchored. Each day has purpose. Even setbacks feel meaningful because they are part of a larger commitment. This perspective reduces anxiety and increases resilience. You stop reacting emotionally to short-term outcomes and start trusting long-term effort. When 6 months pass, the difference is undeniable. Not just in visible results, but in mindset. You think differently, you respond differently, you carry yourself differently. Years of excuses cannot compete with months of disciplined action because excuses consume energy, while discipline multiplies it. Real change does not demand a lifetime. It demands a decision, followed by daily effort, sustained long enough for growth to take root. Applause is attractive, but it often arrives at the wrong time. When recognition comes before readiness, it creates pressure instead of progress. Growth, by its nature, is fragile in the beginning. Just like a seed, it needs protections and time away from external interference and time away from external. Privacy is not hiding. It is nurturing something before it is strong enough to stand on its own. In the early stages of growth, uncertainty is high. Skills are uneven, confidence fluctuates, and mistakes are frequent. Public attention during this phase can be damaging. Every comment, comparison, or expectation adds weight to an already delicate process. Removes that weight. It allows you to learn without fear and prove without embarrassment. You are free to be imperfect, and imperfection is where real learning happens. When growth happens privately, honesty increases. You stop pretending to know more than you do. You admit gaps in knowledge and weaknesses in ability. This honesty accelerates improvement. Many people avoid this phase because it feels uncomfortable, but comfort is rarely the birthplace of excellence. Privacy gives you the courage to confront your limitations directly instead of masking them with image. Applause can also distort motivation. When people praise effort too early, the mind mistakes encouragement for achievement. You begin to protect the praise instead of pursuing progress. Decisions become image-driven rather than growth-driven. In privacy, motivation stays clean. The only reward is improvement itself. This creates a deeper connection to the work and a stronger sense of purpose. Another benefit of private growth is freedom from comparison. Public spaces invite constant measuring: who is faster, who is better, who is ahead. These comparisons are rarely fair and often misleading. So everyone's starting point, pace, and challenges are different. Privacy removes this noise. You measure progress against your past self, not against someone else's highlight moments. This leads to healthier ambition and sustained effort. Privacy also strengthens resilience. When setbacks occur away from public view, recovery is easier. There is no need to explain failure or defend dignity. You learn to fall, adjust, and rise quietly. This builds inner toughness. Later, when challenges happen in public, you remain composed because you have already trained yourself to handle difficulty without attention. Time spent growing privately also sharpens discipline. Without external accountability, you rely on internal standards. You show up because you value the work, not because someone is watching. This kind of discipline is powerful because it lasts. External pressure fades, but internal commitment remains. When applause finally arrives, it feels different. It is no longer something you seek. It is something that follows naturally. By then, your foundation is strong. Skills are refined. Habits are solid and confidence is stable. Recognition no longer distracts you. It affirms what has already been built. Growth that is protected in privacy develops depth. Applause can wait. Strength cannot. Purpose often gets buried under routine, expectations, and noise. Daily life moves so fast that many people forget to ask themselves why they are doing what they are doing. Disappearing for a while creates distance from this constant movement. In that distance, something important happens. You begin to hear your own inner voice again. Without the pressure to respond, perform, or explain, your attention turns inward where purpose quietly waits. Constant interaction pulls focus outward. Messages, opinions, and comparisons slowly replace self-reflection. Over time, you start living according to reactions rather than intentions. Stepping back interrupts this pattern. When external demands reduce, mental space opens. In that space, questions arise naturally. What truly matters to me? What kind of life do I want to build? What drains my energy and what gives it meaning? These questions rarely surface in a busy, noisy life. Solitude has a way of clarifying values. When you are alone with your thoughts, distractions lose their power. You notice what you miss and what you don't. You realize which goals were inherited from others and which ones genuinely belong to you. This clarity is not dramatic, it unfolds slowly. But once it arrives, it reshapes priorities. Effort becomes more focused because it is aligned with something deeper than external reward. Reconnecting with purpose also changes how you view time. Instead of seeing days as tasks to survive, you begin to see them as opportunities to move closer to what matters. Even ordinary actions feel meaningful when they are connected to a larger intention. This shift reduces burnout and increases fulfillment. You are no longer just busy, you are directed. Stepping away also reveals emotional patterns. Without constant distraction, unresolved feelings surface. This can be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Avoided emotions often cloud purpose. When you process them, energy is freed. You stop reacting emotionally to situations and start responding thoughtfully. Purpose thrives in emotional clarity. Another powerful outcome of disconnection is self-trust. When you rely less on external guidance, you learn to listen to your own judgment. Decisions become simpler because they are guided by values rather than approval. This self-trust strengthens commitment. You follow through not because someone is watching, but because it feels right. Reconnection with purpose also brings courage. When you know why you are doing something, fear loses influence. Doubts may still appear, but they no longer control direction. Purpose acts like an anchor. It keeps you steady during uncertainty and resilient during setbacks. You are willing to endure temporary discomfort because the long-term vision is clear. Stepping back does not mean disconnecting forever. It means recalibrating. It is a pause that realigns direction. When you return, your actions carry more intention. You speak less, but with more clarity. You work not to impress, but to express who you truly are becoming. Purpose does not shout, it whispers. You hear it only when life becomes quiet enough to listen. Motivation is exciting, but it is unreliable. It comes in waves, often triggered by emotions, inspiration, or external circumstances. On some days, motivation feels strong and effortless. On other days, it disappears without warning. If progress depends only on motivation, consistency becomes impossible. Discipline, however, does not rely on mood. It is quiet, steady, and dependable. And over time, it becomes the strongest source of confidence. Discipline is the act of showing up even when you don't feel like it. It is choosing to do what needs to be done without negotiating with excuses. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you send a message to yourself that you can be trusted. This self-trust is the foundation of confidence. It is not built through speeches or positive thoughts, but through repeated action. Motivation often asks, how do I feel today? Discipline asks, what is required today? This shift is powerful. When emotions lead, effort fluctuates. When discipline leads, progress continues. Over time, this consistency creates visible improvement. Skills sharpen, habits strengthen, resilience grows. Confidence then becomes a byproduct of competence, not imagination. Another difference between motivation and discipline is sustainability. Motivation burns fast and fades quickly. Discipline burns slowly but lasts long. It does not seek excitement. It values reliability. Just reliability. This reliability reduces anxiety. You stop worrying about who you will perform because you know you will show up. That certainty brings calmness and inner strength. Discipline also teaches humility, reminds you that progress is earned daily, there are no shortcuts. This humility keeps the ego in check and the focus on improvement. Motivational highs can inflate expectations, leading to disappointment when reality does not match excitement. Discipline keeps expectations realistic and grounded in effort. Confidence built through discipline is quiet. It does not need to announce itself. You feel it in your posture, your decisions, and your patience. You are less reactive because you are secure in your ability to handle challenges. Even when things go wrong, discipline gives you a fallback. You return to routine, to effort, to what you can control, Another important aspect of discipline is identity. When you repeatedly act with discipline, you stop seeing it as something you do and start seeing it as who you are. You become someone who finishes what they start, who keeps promises, who remains consistent. This identity shift is powerful. It influences decisions automatically. You no longer debate whether to act. Action feels natural. Motivation often seeks external stimulation, music, speeches, rewards. Discipline is internal. It grows stronger in silence. The more you rely on discipline, the less you depend on circumstances. This independence strengthens confidence further. You know that no matter how you feel or what happens, you can rely on yourself. Discipline may not feel inspiring in the moment, but its long-term effect is transformative. It builds confidence that does not shake under pressure. Confidence rooted in discipline is not loud, but it is unbreakable. The desire to share progress early is natural. When you start improving, there is excitement, hope, and a strong urge to be seen. Sharing feels like motivation, but often it becomes a distraction. Premature sharing creates a false sense of completion. The mind feels rewarded before the work is truly done, and that reward quietly slows momentum. When progress is shared too early, attention shifts from effort to reaction. You begin waiting for responses, likes, and comments, even if the feedback is positive. It divides focus. Energy that should be invested in continuing the work gets spent monitoring reactions. Instead of asking, what's the next step? The mind asks, how did people respond? This shift weakens consistency. Early sharing also invites opinions at the wrong stage. Advice, criticism, and comparison enter before clarity has fully developed. While some feedback may be well-intentioned, it can create confusion. You may start adjusting your path to satisfy others rather than staying true to the process. Momentum requires direction, and too many voices can blur that direction. Another hidden cost of premature sharing is pressure. Once progress is announced, expectations form. You feel watched. Mistakes feel heavier. Setbacks feel embarrassing. This pressure can lead to rushing, cutting corners, or abandoning the effort altogether. What began as excitement turns into stress. Working quietly protects you from this unnecessary weight. Momentum grows best in continuity. It thrives when actions flow naturally from one to the next. Interrupting this flow with announcements breaks rhythm. It is like stopping a moving train repeatedly to explain where it is going. The energy needed to restart becomes exhausting. Silence keeps the train moving. There is also a psychological trap in early validation. Praise creates satisfaction. Satisfaction reduces hunger. When the mind feels acknowledged, it relaxes. This is dangerous in the early stages of growth, when effort should still be intense. Delaying sharing keeps hunger alive. It maintains the inner drive that pushes you to go further. Quiet progress builds depth. When you are not busy presenting improvement, you are fully immersed in creating it. You notice details, you refine skills, you correct mistakes early. This depth separates surface level change from real transformation. It is the difference between looking improved and being improved. Resisting the urge to share also builds self-control. It teaches patience and emotional maturity. You learn to sit with excitement without needing to display it. This restraint strengthens character. It shows that you value the outcome more than the attention. When momentum is protected, progress accelerates. What felt slow at first begins to compound. Skills connect, habits strengthen, confidence grows naturally. By the time you do share, the work is solid. Reactions no longer influence you because the foundation is already strong. Silence in the early stages is not secrecy, it is strategy. Protecting momentum ensures that when progress becomes visible, it is sustainable, not temporary. Recognition feels rewarding, but when it arrives before habits are fully formed, it can weaken the very growth it celebrates. Habits are fragile in the beginning. They require repetition, patience, and protection from interruption. Seeking recognition too early shifts attention away from consistency and toward appearance, making habits easier to break and harder to sustain. Habits are built through routine, not excitement. In the early phase, they feel unnatural and require conscious effort. Every repetition is a small victory, but these victories are meant to strengthen behavior, not ego. When recognition enters too soon, the mind starts associating effort with reward rather than identity. You act to be seen instead of acting because it is who you are becoming. Consistency thrives in simplicity. When you focus only on showing up, decisions become easier. You don't debate whether to act, you simply follow the routine. Recognition complicates this process. It introduces expectation and self-awareness. You begin evaluating performance instead of practicing it. This evaluation creates hesitation, and hesitation breaks flow. Another danger of early recognition is dependence. Praise feels good, and the brain quickly wants more of it. When recognition is absent, motivation drops. Habits that rely on external validation are unstable. They collapse during silence. Habits built quietly are different. They are supported by internal standards. You continue even when no one is watching because the behavior itself has become normal. Habits also need time to integrate with identity. Repetition rewires the mind. Over time, actions stop feeling forced and start feeling automatic. This transition cannot be rushed. It happens below the surface without visible signs. Recognition during this phase can interrupt the process by pulling attention outward. Privacy allows habits to settle deeply and become part of who you are. Quiet habit building also strengthens discipline. You rely on structure rather than emotion. You act on schedule, not on mood. This reliability compounds. Missed days decrease, resistance fades, and effort becomes smoother. Recognition at this stage is unnecessary because progress is already rewarding. Another benefit of delaying recognition is emotional stability. When your effort is private, your mood is not tied to feedback. You are less reactive. Success does not inflate you, and silence does not discourage you. This balance makes habits resilient. They survive good days and bad days alike. Letting habits form before recognition also creates authenticity. When habits are solid, recognition feels like acknowledgement, not validation. You don't need it, but you can accept it without losing focus. The behavior remains consistent because it is rooted in identity, not applause. Strong habits change how you move through life. They simplify choices and conserve energy. Once established, they support growth effortlessly. Recognition can come later when habits are unbreakable and momentum is self-sustaining. Protecting habits in silence is an investment. The reward is not attention but permanence. Results have a way of speaking louder than words. All explanations, promises, and declarations can influence perception temporarily. They cannot replace tangible achievement. In every area of life, whether personal growth, career, or relationships, people respect evidence. Hard work, consistency, and transformation create proof that cannot be denied, ignored, or misinterpreted. Letting results speak means focusing on creating outcomes that naturally demonstrate your effort and skill without needing justification. Words are easy. Anyone can talk about dreams, plans, or abilities, but execution is different. Execution requires time, patience, and often discomfort. It is silent, slow, and deliberate. Those who rely on announcements often waste energy convincing others rather than building the reality they aspire to. By contrast, those who focus on results channel all their energy into action. And over time, the results themselves communicate everything that words could not. Allowing results to speak also cultivates credibility. When you consistently deliver, people start to trust your abilities without needing reassurances. Your work becomes your reputation. This is far more powerful than any promotion, praise, or explanation because it is objective. Results do not exaggerate, lie, or fluctuate with emotions. They reflect effort and skill honestly. Over time, this credibility compounds. People stop questioning your value because your actions have proven it repeatedly. Patience is a key component in letting results speak. Often the temptation is to showcase progress prematurely, to get recognition before it is earned, but doing so can dilute impact. Early announcements or demonstrations risk exposure to criticism, distraction, and expectation. Waiting until your work is fully developed ensures that when it is revealed, it carries weight and commands attention. The impact of mature results far exceeds the fleeting applause of partial efforts. Results also inspire others in a way that words rarely can. People are drawn to visible transformation. They notice when someone moves from struggle to skill, from inconsistency to mastery. This influence is authentic because it is evidence-based. Unlike motivational talks, which can be ignored or forgotten, results are undeniable. They create aspiration and respect naturally, without requiring persuasion. Another benefit of letting results speak is that it reinforces self-discipline and focus. When the goal is the outcome rather than the recognition, effort becomes intrinsic. You work for improvement, not approval. This mindset reduces distraction, helps maintain momentum, and strengthens resilience. Even in the face of challenges, setbacks, or criticism, you remain committed because your purpose is tied to the outcome, not the opinion of others. Allowing results to speak also develops humility. You learn that external validation is unnecessary for meaningful achievement. Satisfaction comes from knowing you delivered on your intentions, not from applause. Humility combined with accomplishment creates a quiet strength that commands respect effortlessly. It is a strength that others notice instinctively without you needing to advertise it. In addition, letting results speak encourages reflection and refinement. When your work becomes your voice, you naturally examine quality, effectiveness, and impact. This attention to excellence produces higher standards and continual improvement. Every result becomes a benchmark for the next step, creating a cycle of growth that builds long-term mastery. Finally, results build lasting legacy. Words are temporary and promises fade, but outcomes endure. Whether it is a successful project, a skill acquired, or a habit formed, the results have permanence. They can be revisited, measured, and relied upon as proof of capability and effort. Over time, this body of work tells your story far more convincingly than any explanation ever could. By focusing on results rather than announcements, you cultivate influence, credibility, discipline, and impact. The quieter you work, the louder your results speak, and when they do, they leave no room for doubt. Comparison is one of the quietest thieves of progress. It sneaks into the mind subtly disguised as awareness or motivation, but its effects are destructive. When you measure your journey against someone else's, you shift focus from your own growth to someone else's achievements. This creates unnecessary pressure, self-doubt, and distraction. Disappearing from external observation allows you to focus on your path, free from the influence of comparisons that rarely reflect the full story. The danger of comparison lies in its selective nature. People rarely see the struggles, failures, or long hours that precede another person's success. They only see the polished results, the highlight reel. Measuring yourself against these fragments creates unrealistic expectations. You may feel inadequate or hurried, even though your own progress is genuine and meaningful. By stepping back and avoiding comparison, you gain the space to appreciate your own pace and process. Comparison also diminishes joy. When the mind constantly measures, satisfaction becomes conditional. Achievements are no longer celebrated for their intrinsic value. They are only celebrated if they surpass someone else's. This mindset erodes gratitude and creates a perpetual sense of insufficiency. Working quietly, away from the lens of others, allows you to experience satisfaction purely from effort and progress, independent of external benchmarks. Moreover, comparison stifles creativity. When you are focused on someone else's results, you begin to imitate rather than innovate. Decisions are filtered through the lens of expectation and trend, not authenticity. Privacy and intentional withdrawal allows space for original thinking. You can experiment, take risks, and explore new approaches without fear of judgment or the pressure to conform. This freedom fosters innovation and personal growth. Comparison also amplifies impatience. You may feel that progress is too slow because someone else seems ahead. This impatience can lead to shortcuts, rushed decisions, and compromised quality. When you step back from external evaluation, you learn to trust the timeline of your own effort. Growth becomes measured in mastery, not in speed, and the process itself gains meaning. Another subtle effect of comparison is distraction. Energy that should be focused on your own goals is instead spent analyzing someone else's path. This analysis rarely leads to direct action. It mostly breeds hesitation, self-doubt, or envy. By removing yourself from the environment of constant comparison, you reclaim energy and attention for what truly matters: consistent effort and intentional development. Comparison also undermines confidence. When your sense of worth is tied to others, validation becomes external. You may feel competent only when you surpass or match someone else. Quiet focus, however, builds internal validation. Confidence grows from demonstrated effort and skill, not from ranking against others. Over time, this internal confidence becomes unshakable because it is grounded in real capability, not perception. Stepping away from comparison allows deeper self-reflection. You start asking better questions. Am I improving? Am I learning? Am I consistent? These questions orient you toward progress instead of judgment. Reflection becomes constructive rather than critical, leading to sustained growth. Finally, resisting comparison teaches patience and self-compassion. You understand that every journey is unique, with its own timeline, challenges, and opportunities. You stop measuring your worth by someone else's standard and start honoring your own efforts. This mindset not only improves performance but also nurtures mental and emotional well-being. By avoiding comparison, you reclaim your energy, protect your growth, and build a trajectory that is authentic, sustainable, and resilient. The quieter you work, the stronger your results, and the more naturally they shine without interference from the distracting lens of others. Patience is one of the most underestimated ingredients of meaningful growth. In a world that glorifies speed, instant results, and visible progress, people often rush through the process, hoping for immediate recognition. But lasting transformation is rarely quick. True success requires time to learn, time to refine, time to fail, and time to recover. Disappearing from the constant demand for attention allows patience to grow, giving your efforts the space to mature naturally. Impatience often leads to shortcuts. When results are expected too soon, people compromise on quality or skip steps. They focus on looking successful rather than becoming successful. This behavior undermines long-term growth. By stepping away from the eyes of others, you remove external pressure, allowing you to work deliberately, methodically, and thoroughly. Each step becomes intentional, not rushed, and every effort contributes meaningfully to progress. Patience also deepens understanding. Skills, knowledge, and habits do not develop overnight. They require repeated practice, reflection, and adaptation. Rushing through the process creates gaps in mastery. When you embrace patience, you allow time for mistakes to teach lessons, for reflection to inform adjustments, and for learning to settle into long-term memory. Over months of focused effort, small improvements compound into extraordinary results that are visible and sustainable. Another important aspect of patience is resilience. When you are patient, setbacks do not derail progress. Temporary failures are seen as part of the journey rather than signals of defeat. Disappearing for a period allows you to experience challenges without the added burden of public scrutiny. This private space strengthens your ability to recover, adjust and persist, which ultimately produces stronger outcomes than a path interrupted by pressure and distraction. Patience also cultivates emotional stability. Constantly seeking external validation creates anxiety, restlessness, and stress. You measure your worth by others' reactions instead of your own progress. When you work quietly and patiently, you no longer tie satisfaction to immediate acknowledgement. Your focus shifts to the process, and with it comes calmness, clarity, and confidence. Patience allows effort to be enjoyable rather than stressful, and progress to be rewarding even before it is recognized. Time also allows for refinement. Early attempts are rarely perfect. Patience gives space to identify mistakes, adjust techniques, and strengthen weak points. In a noisy environment, the urge to show progress can mask imperfections and prevent thorough development. When growth happens away from external observation, attention can remain fully on improvement rather than presentation. The result is not just visible progress, but excellence that withstands scrutiny. Patience builds credibility. When results are delayed but deliberate, they arrive with undeniable impact. People notice the difference between rushed attempts and well-executed mastery. By letting your efforts mature in private, you allow the work to speak for itself, commanding respect that is earned rather than demanded. Moreover, patience strengthens self-discipline. It teaches you to act consistently without relying on immediate rewards or recognition. Each day of focused effort reinforces commitment. Over time, discipline becomes a habit, and patience ensures that this habit is sustainable. Finally, patience transforms perspective. It shifts the focus from short-term achievements to long-term vision. You begin to see setbacks as lessons, delays as opportunities to improve, and effort as its own reward. This mindset change creates resilience, satisfaction, and ultimately results that are not only visible but also deeply meaningful. By embracing patience, you allow growth to occur fully, habits to solidify, and results to emerge naturally. In the silence of deliberate effort, the foundation for lasting success is quietly but powerfully built.